So hey guys, what's up? This is Shark Talking. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about the second award banner in the universe. We have award SS Mikhail, award SS Final Empress, and award SS Monika. It's the very first version of Final Empress. She is the female protagonist if you decide to choose a female protagonist in Romancing Saga 2. And she has 3 different styles so far in Japan. Mikhail is a character that only has 2 SS styles. This is the second and the last one so far. Monika still has one more in the future, so this is like her third SS style, and we will get another one in the future. Well, we need to talk about them all, and some of them are good, some of them are not. They got some buffs based on the Japanese release, and well, it's hard to decide someone for them or not, especially because we are reaching the end of the month. And I'm pretty sure they will release some very important characters up to the end. And up to the end of the year. Final Empress is unique. And we need to discuss Final Empress first because I think she's the highest card on this banner. Final Empress has Moonlight. This is a different spell. It's not Healing Light. It's a heal spell but feels like it's moon based, but it's still sun. And guys, it has something unique as well. It recovers HP with a C power, and then it grants Morale Up for 2 turns. Morale Up, we saw this with Summer Selma. She introduced this to the global version, and now we have this with Final Empress on a healing spell. She is a healer and an attacker on the same time, and she excels in both. Well, you can never compare the damage output of Final Empress with another characters that are focused only on damage. She loses some part of the damage because of wanting to be a utility character, but her damage is still not so behind. And let's just compare Moonlight to other skills. It's C power. The healing part of the Healing Light is only D. You see, it's also 3 BP because I awaken it. So the healing itself, the base skill, is stronger than Sophia's healing. But because Sophia has more love, you usually have similar results with both. With the difference that Final Empress will be able to buff Morale Up. And not only that, it's interesting because some characters have passives that increase the damage when they have full HP. So Moonlight will bring them to full HP, and you also get a Morale Up buff to increase their damage. And Morale Up medium means 25% increase in damage. So to compare this well, I will open now Roma Saga website. I have this list with all the characters that can produce Morale Up. We have some that can do this for the whole squad, some that can do it for self. There's no single character in the Japanese version that can only do for single targets, because, well, you usually want to use this to the whole squad like Flamenco Barber does, or with Poet, because he can do this for the whole squad as well. And they also have this fast property that increases the utility of the spell, because if you release this with fast, it means that it will go before your other character attacks, and it just guarantees that the buff will last for 2 turns. But if you are using this with Final Empress, the scenario is a little different. You need to see if she has enough speed to go first and before the person that you are buffing. So it works well when she is on a formation that increases her agility, but it will not work so fine if you're using her in a setup that decreases her agility. But it's still good to use this before you enter Overdrive, for example, and then you want to unleash a very strong skill with max potential, like, say, Emilia. She's on the back line with a different attack and lower agility, and then Final Empress will help some of the damage. I was thinking about summoning for Final Empress before we saw anything about a buff to her, but that's because I like characters with different setups. Like, we don't have any other character that can do exactly what Final Empress does. She brings damage, sun damage, especially because we need more elemental damage in the game, since a lot of the stages on episode 12 and Gaiden have enemies weak against elemental damage, but not against physical damage, the common types of damage that we have with all the other characters. So it's time to start getting characters with elemental damage, and that's exactly when Final Empress enter. And she has this skill called the Moon Flash that is very unique as well. It's slash damage, very similar to having a nerf damage, very high for an A damage 8 BP cost is Slash plus Sun, and she also got a buff in her global version. And for 2 turns she will get a defense boost stance. I don't remember if we have this with an active skill in the game yet, but what it means is just that she will decrease incoming damage to herself. And that's interesting, because she's a character that will not be exactly on the front lines. I think she'll be on the middle lines, but she can still be attacked. She has better physical defense when compared to the likes of Sophia. She has a better endurance. She may not have a better will, so if you're facing an enemy that inflicts more magical damage, you may want to use Sophia or other healers that are actually more defensive against magical stuff. So you use Moon's Flash when you start the fight, and then when you need a healing, she will use Moonlight. It's interesting because you can make a squad of 5 damage dealers with a off healer like Final Empress in the squad. You don't need to bring dedicated healer anymore. Moon Flash is like the selling point together with Moonlight, offensive, defensive, and healing. A very interesting setup. And the last one is Lunar Blade. We saw this with Noel. It's kinda too much. 15 BP cost for only B power. I don't know many real case usage of this skill. Well, I think you should ignore this for most of the time, unless you are on a scenario where the enemies are weak against Moon and you need an AoE damage and you don't have many other options. That's the only thing. You should just focus on Moon Flash and Moonlight and awaken both. And the cycle here is interesting. Moon Flash gets to 6 BP if you fully awaken it, Moonlight to 4. So she can use Moon Flash 2 times in a row, and the 3rd turn she will still be able to use Moonlight, but only if you fully awaken the 2 skills. And usually you need more healing on the 2nd and on the 3rd turn, and she will still be able to at least use 2 skills and then 1 healing, and then she will just keep the normal cycle that it's skill, attack, or attack, healing, okay? So yeah, this is Final Empress, and now about her passives. This is where things start getting a little interesting. She starts with Inherited Emotion. When a recovery action is made, increases own STR by a large effect. Well, this means that when she uses a skill that has a recovery effect, she will get an STR buff of 20% of her own STR. Well, she only has one skill that can do it, and it's Moonlight. So every time you use Moonlight, you have a recovery spell that's similar to Healing Light, a little stronger, that will also buff the morale of your character. So 25% increase in final damage, and will also give her a 20% increase in STR. So it's a defensive thing, it's an utility spell that will also be offensive because it will increase her damage. The problem is that if you are using too much BP to use Moonlight, you will not have enough BP to use the skills with your Final Empress, and then you will have some turns only using normal attack. But if the enemy is weak to Slash, that will still give her a very high damage output. And it means that when you are healing, you have lots of effects. Increasing the morale of some of your characters will also be very important. Like I said, if you are using her with someone like Emilia that has a triple S damage skill, and then you are increasing Emilia's output damage when you are healing her. If you are using a squad with 2 healers, you usually use Final Empress to buff the character that deals more damage, and your second healer to just heal someone that is not exactly the best damage dealer on the squad. So that kind of works for some very interesting strategies in her favor. I really like this passive here. And the next one is called the Breath of Life, and it recovers HP by a medium chance. That is 25% of chance of recovering with a medium effect. It's usually close to 300 HP with what we have now with level 42 on style. Should be like 300 like Princess White Rose also does. And it's just good because if she keeps getting attacked, and depending on the formation, because she can also be on the front lines, she will heal. It is way better than Absorption Attack, because it will trigger on the start of her turn and not when she attacks. It's a very interesting thing, just like all healers have in this game. Not all, but most of them. And the last one is fired up 4, so she gets 15% increase in damage. And one thing I forgot to mention is that if you are using Moonlight on herself, she will also get the morale up bonus. So you have fired up 4 with 15% increase in damage. We have Moonlight with, together with Inherited Emotion for 25% more. So it can get to 40% increase and 20% increase on STR as well. So it may feels like even if you want some more damage with Moonflash, you can start the fight by using Moonlight in herself and then use Moonflash after that. I think that you still have a very high damage output by doing this. It's not optimal. The optimal thing is to heal when someone needs, but it's another interesting option that you can have. So now we are on Roma SaGa website, so we can give a look on her status multipliers and her future styles. This is the Final Empress that we just got, and you can see that she has very high love because of her healing spells. You can still pass her healing Moonlight to the other styles, but they don't have all that much love. So it's very safe and interesting to invest on this Final Empress. I think that she's one of the few cases where her future styles do not completely outclass her. You still be using this style. Some people still believe that this is the best version of Final Empress, while the other ones will be better on damage. You also have a very good endurance actually when looking to the other styles that she has. This one here is actually a platinum one, and this one is a summer one, also limited. Okay, so another good thing is that we can get her even better by summoning the summer style that's very far from now, but it's interesting because it has an attack that deals damage and heals. Watermelon Cut. It has a recovery power of 15. It's interesting. Recovers HP. So, she will attack and heal on the same time. Get a buff. Man, it's interesting to have this type of stuff. She already has a passive that can heal on the start of turn. She will then deal damage, recover HP, increase STRs. So you can simply stick to this attack instead of sticking to Moonflash. And this other style also has access to Moonflash. And this version will probably be changed just like this one, because when they change a skill, there's no way that will be the same skill for all the other styles. So it's an interesting combination that will get very strong in the future, but you have to get this skill and pass into this version that we are using now. So this means that this style has a very great longevity on the game. And even in the future, if you get another styles, you'll still be using this one. You can also get a better opener attack that may come from here. You have V Impact. It's a double S damage, very close to triple S already. And it has 13 BP cost, so not so high. You can still use this on turn 1, meaning that depending on the content, this can be interesting. The other attacks from this version of Final Empress are not so interesting, so I think she's better for Inheritance. Half Moon is not bad because it's very cheap. It's just that Waterfront Blade is not so good anymore. We have a lot of characters that can do this. So yeah, my opinions on Final Empress are kind of high. I think she's pretty unique. It's a character that I want to play with, because I like characters that have different setups than what we are used to. So in my opinion, she is a 9.0 out of 10. Yeah, again, I know, I think that it's like giving her an SS when we have up to SSS tier, triple S. And she's a double S grade, especially because of all that she has to offer, and she's a safe character to invest for a lot of time. Even if she gets another style, she will still be useful. I think she's worth summoning. Yes, but is worth summoning for this banner? Maybe not, guys. We have a lot of different banners for the future, and just herself may not be enough of a reason to summon on this banner. But well, we have to go back to another character. Let's talk about Monika here. This version of Monika is especially good for those that skipped the Christmas style. But she's not so better than the Christmas one. She has this first attack called the Cutting Lunge, and it's deep power, 4 BP, okay, as the first one. And then we have Linear Cross, and Linear Cross is actually the whole reason why people summon for this version of Monika, or because they don't have the other Monika. And it's a very interesting attack. It's C power, it's not so high, you know, that we have skills that can do 8 damage with 6 BP. She will be able to do C power damage with 5 BP cost, but at least she can use this 3 times in a row. Depending on the content, the sacrificing power, it's okay because you have more ways to deal damage, and if you are trying to do fast clears, like use characters that will clear every new wave in one turn, this will work pretty fine. I believe another reason why Linear Cross is only C power is because it also comes with fast. So if you are using Divine Wall or Hunter's Gambit formation, where they increase attacks of your character but reduce the agility, it doesn't really matter anymore, because fast means that she will go first no matter what, no matter the speed of your other characters, no matter the speed of your enemies. It means that Linear Cross will be cast before everything. And because you can use this 3 times in a row, and sometimes you only need 3 turns to finish a whole fight, this gets even better. And well, the last one is called Firecracker, and Firecracker is heat instead of sun this time, and attacks everyone. It has a very cool animation actually. It has its uses, but it's very hard to use on the same time. You can reduce this to 13 BP, and if you use her on Divine Wall formation, where she do not use a skill on the first turn, and on the second wave, and if you clear the first wave with your other characters, she will be able to use Firecracker. It really depends on how you play and how you set up your squad. If you have 3 characters on the front lines and they use their skills on the first wave, and they allow your Monika to use Firecracker on the second wave, that can be useful, but it's still very restricted. It's a very costly skill. In my opinion, Monika is made to use Linear Cross all the time when she has this available. Just this and nothing else. Forget about cutting Nunch, just focus on Linear Cross. This Linear Cross is a interesting attack, since it, like I said, a lot of enemies are weak against elemental damage, but not exactly to physical damage. This allows Monika to be used in content where she can outclass some mages. Like, there are Slims, and they are very resistant against physical attacks, but they are weak against elemental attacks, and Monika will be able to deal very good damage on these cases. And now let's give a look on her passives. The Fighting Spirit 2 increases her dex with 25% chance, 20% increase. Fired Up 3, so strange to get a character with Fired Up 3 on this point. And the last passive is Weak Point Focus. She gets 15% increase in damage when she hits a weak point of your enemy, like Pierce, Sud with Linear Cross, and Heat with Firecracker. She has a lot of options to hit the enemy weaknesses, and you will use this Monika only when you are hitting the enemy weaknesses, so you have 25% increase in damage at most times, and a dex buff when she lands an attack. It's not so good because you need to attack before you get the buff, but well, it's a node design that there's a lot of characters with this. So, after this, we have to compare her to other Monikas, because, well, you have Christmas Monika. Is this award Monika better than the Christmas one? Well, most likely, but not always. Yeah, that's true. Let's just give a look on this Monika here. You have to give a check to their status. They are pretty similar, guys. They have very similar endurance here on body, similar dexterity, 2 points of difference. They have very similar agility. Christmas Monika sometimes attack before enemies, even on Divine Wall or Hunter's Gambit formation. And this one is a little faster yet. They have the same intelligence. This one has a little more will, so she will receive less damage from spells. And she has lower love, but doesn't matter because we don't use love. And they have the same charm, so they will both receive the same healings. Very, 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 very similar. And what happens is that you have to check the passives of both Monikas to see which one will perform better, depending on the content. This Monika will do better when we have enemies weak against Sun or Pierce, but well, when the enemy is weak against Pierce, Christmas Monika may be better, because she increases the damage when she is dealing critical attacks. Critical attack is when you are using your Southern Cross against an enemy that is immortal. Immortal is Undead. So, using Southern Cross is better with this version of Monika. And if you want to do some damage, you'll be using Award Monika, but she doesn't really replace this one. You can still use another thing that's similar to Southern Cross that comes with the Platinum Monika that we also get this from free from story and by missions actually. This one has Mega Thrust. Mega Thrust has the same, it's this one here, it's this using a different name. Has the same damage than Southern Cross, but without the critical effect against Undeads. So, against Undeads, you still be using Christmas Monika, and against enemies that are weak against elemental damage or sun and heat, you'll be using a Ward Monika. I believe that gives her some edge against some content, but the output damage is just so similar between the two that if you have the Christmas style, you have not so much reasons to summon for this one, since they both perform similar on pierce damage. But if sun damage is what you have, this one can be good for single target damage. But we still have a lot of options on sun damage. Yeah, we have a lot of mages that can perform sun damage, yes. And even Final Empress can also do it. If you get Final Empress before you get this Monika, I think you can stop and don't summon more. But now if you don't have Christmas Monika, this one gets even more value, because you can inherit Mega Thrust from the Platinum Monika and perform very similar to Christmas Monika, just not the same damage when attacking against an Undead. And this Monika here, I will give her an 8.5 out of 10. And why is that? It's just because her kit is not so impressive when only one skill is really important. But she's still better than most other rapier users in the game. It's just like she's an S+ if you were considering an SS grade. Okay, so very good, but it's still not perfect. And if you have Christmas Monika, you can skip this one, because sun damage is not so hard to find. If it was heat, I would prefer heat. Okay, now we have Mikhail. And Mikhail got a buff as well, but only to his passive. He starts with Quick Trust. This one here is the same that we have with Christmas Monika. And it's an interesting attack, actually. Very close to C. It stays with a deep power. It's 14 modifier. On 15 modifier, it becomes C. So not so bad, but not so good as well. And the second one is called Light Speed. And Light Speed is interesting. Right now, it's not so good. It increases agility. It's interesting because, like I said, when you use happier users, you lose agility because of formations. Divine Wall and Hunter's Gambit decrease their agility. But Light Speed will increase it to standard levels again. But it has a lower power. It's only B power with 8 BP cost. We can get this upgraded in the future because they will release a mechanic where you can upgrade skills, and then it will have an A power and also an agility buff, and that is super good. Guys, it's just like having the same damage as Heaven and Earth, but with a buff instead of an effect. Because Heaven and Earth has a stun effect that it's not always useful, but here you have an agility buff, and agility is important because it also makes you evade attacks if you have a very, very high agility. Okay, and now let's just give a look on the other attack that's called Noble Cross. And this attack is interesting, but with some restrictions. Yeah, some restrictions. Again, it's Pierce plus Sun, yet another character that can produce sun damage. It seems like the game wants us to use sun damage now, because enemies will be weak against sun. And at least it's 15, not 16. But it's B power instead of an A. Yes, and well, I just don't think that you will be using this too much. Just like I said with Monika, you need to program your setup to save BP on the first wave, make your character not attack, and then your other 3 characters, they are on the front line of Divine Wall formation, will have to finish the first wave by themselves. So only the second wave they don't have VP, and only your happier users on the back line will have VP, and they will be able to fire this important skill that uses AoE attack. But then after that, he will just have to use Quick Trust instead of Light Speed. Yes, and even an Awakening Quick Trust, or else he will not even have enough VP. It's an interesting choice, but I still think that you will be using Light Speed most of the time. So now about Mikhail passives. The first one is Training Attack. He has 25% chance of healing when he attacks, something like 250 HP with our current levels. And he has fired up 4. This one was the thing that changed it for the global. Before, he didn't have this, so they changed this for global because he was lacking some power. And the last one is called Pierce Decree, and just like global exclusive Katarina, it's a buff that triggers on the start of a turn, but only 25% chance of triggering. The buff is 10% to the whole squad. Because of how the game is, this is a very interesting buff to have. We don't have buffs that increase too much value, so 10% is actually good when you have a squad that can do pierce damage, but only if you are using a full pierce damage squad. You can also use Mikhail in a different setup, like using the new formation that increases STR for 4 slots and then place him in the back line, and that means that he will not attack as fast as the other characters, but the buff may trigger. And then the other 4 characters, but they have to be spear users, so they will get the increased damage. Well, I think it's interesting to have this, but it's not so important in Mikhail's case, since we don't have many full pierce damage squads, instead of just slash like we have with Katarina, and then it's easier to build a slash damaging squad and not a pierce one. Yeah, formations are better for slashers. That's true. So now let's give a look on his status and compare to the other styles. So Mikhail has 5 different styles in the game so far. We already have 4 of them. We only lack this one here, and this one is kind of important to his own build, but we will be talking about this later. The Platinum style for Mikhail is so bad in status, only 55% for Dexterity. And this one has a little more, 73. He gets up to 209 because of his base increase, but it's still not so high. He needed a little of a buff to his own Dexterity, because he's kinda of off tank. He tries to be one, but it's not working so fine here on his case. But because he has very good endurance in average or above average will, he can be used on formations where he's placed on the front line. Not much of a high agility, so that's why he needs to use that skill to make it better. His intelligence is low, but he's not so good for feint anyway. Yeah, this is his status. It's better than the Platinum one, but not so much better. He only loses on agility and intelligence. The other stuff he wins. Yeah, he wins in all other stuffs. But now let's just give a look on his past passes before global updates. I prefer the global update. This one here was about reducing damage when he's on full HP, and we all know that full HP passives are not so interesting. Yeah, but it was kind of more designed for his high endurance mode. But I think that now he has a different use if you consider his future S style. Let's just give a look here. This version of Mikhail should not be released too far in the schedule. It's from November of 2019. We got some styles from around this release already. And he has access to a skill called the Matador. Matador puts yourself into an evasion counter state. This is just like Parry, but costlier. It uses 7 BP when fully awakened, but he will evade all attacks, but also counter with B power 21 modifier. It's not so strong for damage, but at least it's something that can be useful. It's Parry, but costlier. Yeah, the problem is just that you won't be able to cycle between these 4 too much. So Matador works because he has very high endurance. So the turns that you are not using Matador, you can simply hold up the damage. Well, and if you don't want this, you can simply inherit Southern Cross from his base Platinum style. Yeah, we have Southern Cross, and that is your Mikhail. In my opinion, he's not so important. Even this buff that feels like global exclusive Katarina buff do not make him a very strong, happier user. I still believe that you will be using Monika way more than any version of Mikhail. And that is a problem. You'll be getting more happier users in the future, and Mikhail do not receive any update, so his future prospect is not so good, sadly. And guys, the important question always comes in, is it worth so money on this banner? And the answer is yes and no. Again, yes, we don't have any banner that we should be calling the must-have banner. There are always decisions to be made based on your own characters. If you already have Christmas Monika, you don't really need this one, because some damage will not be so hard to find. If it was heat, that would be better Final Empress is very unique. I really want to play with this character because she brings something new to the table, but it's not something where she is the best one. She's not a best damage dealer, she's not a best healer, but she brings a mix and can be very useful because now she has more sustain and is also a buffer, and she was not like that in the Japanese version. I believe that if you summon for Final Empress, you'll be impressed. You'll be using her for a long time. Because she's not excel in any of the stuff that she does, she's not a must-have. She's just a very strong character to have. And Mikhail, sadly, is still underperforming even with a global buff. So it depends on your gens. Just remember that they will probably release something very good on the end of November or the month of December, and it's good to save gems. Don't look on my number of gems because I summoned it for Final Empress and she's not home yet, okay? So please, if you enjoyed this video, give a like, a comment, and also if you want to support the channel, you can use the Patreon, PayPal, or Coffee buttons links on the description of the video. We see each other in the next one. Bye.